A question I'm often asked is, does your living trust protect your assets from a lawsuit? Now this is incredibly important because you need to know what protection you have and perhaps more importantly, what protection you don't have. In this video, you're going to understand the primary benefits of having a revocable living trust. You're going to understand the need for a living trust and how it ties into your estate planning. I'll show you how to keep your estate private and out of the public record. You'll see how trust can impose tremendous restrictions on assets. I'll share with you the difference between revocable and irrevocable or irrevocable trusts. You'll learn the power of trust language for maximizing your protection. Okay, one of the things I always start with when it comes to talking about trust is understanding the primary purpose of a trust. And if we back up for just a moment, we have to understand that the primary purpose of having a trust in place is to help us to accomplish our estate planning objectives. Now, when we break that term down, estate planning, basically we're talking about the process of determining how our assets are distributed upon our death and to whom they will be distributed to. So if we look at this, we back up even further and say, hey, what's an estate plan? An estate plan is a plan for your estate. Everyone has an estate, no matter how big that may be, how small it may be, how complicated it may be, how simple it may be. Simply put, you have an estate, you need a plan for that estate. And as I share with people on a regular basis, if you don't have a plan for your estate, guess what? The government has a plan for you. Now, my guess is you're not going to like their plan, but I'd also guess they're going to like their plan. You've got to keep that from happening by having your own estate plan in place. Well, that's the primary purpose of a trust. Now, the way that a trust works is basically it is an arrangement between key role players. You see, in any trust arrangement, we have a trustor, a trustee, and a beneficiary. Now, a trustor, often referred to as a settlor or a grantor, that's essentially the person that is establishing the trust. When you're working on your estate plan and you set up a trust, you will be the trustor or the grantor or the settlor. So that's basically you are setting up your trust. Now, the next is a trustee. That's the manager of the trust. Now, as the manager of the trust, while you are living, if you want to continue things the way that they've always been, you continue to exercise control over those assets so nothing changes. Many times people are, I guess, misinformed on this, or they just misunderstand that they think if they have a trust, it's going to complicate their lives and they're going to lose control over their assets. They're going to have to, submit to a trust department of a bank, and they're going to have trust officers, and they're going to have multiple signatures to conduct any business. Well, it doesn't have to be that way, and it's typically not that way. Well, what's the next step? We've got the trustor, we've got the trustee, now we have the beneficiary. That's who's going to receive your assets whenever you pass away. That's generally going to be your family members, your children, your grandchildren. So that kind of comes into play. How does the trust protect our assets? Depending upon the type of assets and who you're trying to protect your assets from, it kind of changes things. You see, in a typical situation with a revocable living trust, if somebody said, would that protect my assets from a lawsuit? Generally, I would have to say no. Now, I know that's probably not what you want to hear, but I'm not here to tell you what you want to hear. I'm telling you what you need to hear. I'm telling you what actually happens, how it actually works. With a revocable living trust, no, the assets you place in there are not necessarily going to give you asset protection. But it also depends what assets you place in there. If you place in assets that are held through your LLC, that limited liability company, yes, you will receive asset protection. The reason for that is that the LLC itself provides the asset protection, and once the LLC is transferred into the trust, that protection from the LLC also goes to the trust because those assets are held separate. So you have that limited liability. But purely putting an asset into the trust does not give you asset protection from any potential creditors. Well, that's important to know because that's a key distinction because it's how the trust is set up. Now, again, when we're talking about a traditional revocable living trust scenario, you don't get the same protection as you would in maybe a irrevocable or an irrevocable living trust. You see, in that situation, you don't have the same control over it. You don't have the same flexibility. You're not necessarily going to be the trustee. Fact is, you have to have a separate trustee to make sure that once you've transferred that in, you don't have the control. Because you don't have that control, you have the asset protection. But do you see the challenge here? Typically, everything is about we want to control everything. Well, if we control it, we also have potential liability. If we give up the control, we have the protection, but we don't have any control. So it's kind of a blending, if you will. I have some clients that they'll have a revocable trust for their estate planning, but then they'll have certain assets that they want to put into an irrevocable trust. You can do this. Fact is, you can have multiple trusts, and that's something that people need to know about. The other thing is, if we go back to how this trust is structured, a revocable living trust does offer protection for personal assets depending upon who we're talking about. Now, we've got the trustor, the trustee, the beneficiary. Well, the beneficiary, while you're living, does not receive access to those assets. So in the event that somebody is sued, if that money is held in trust for them, that's not their asset. So if they're sued and somebody gets a judgment against them and tries to come to take your trust assets, they can't do it because there is creditor protection involved in that. Same thing even once you've passed away. If the money is distributed to them outright, then those assets are attachable in a lawsuit. If the money is held in trust for their benefit and their expenses are paid by the trustee, whoever that successor trustee may be, then that's going to give you lawsuit protection. Let's go through that again because I know it can get a little confusing. Essentially, what we're talking about is asset protection for assets held within this trust. Even in a revocable trust, for your estate plan, you can have restrictions on it. And that's one of the tremendous benefits is those restrictions on the assets. The money can be held in the trust for the benefit of your heirs and beneficiaries and distributed perhaps by the payment of expenses by your trustee once you've passed away. Maybe for college expenses, maybe they can have a certain amount. If they want to start a business, they can get a distribution. If they want to purchase a home, different things that can be provided for, but they don't actually have access to all the money that's in there. Because they don't have access to the money that's in there, they don't have the control over it. That gives them the lawsuit protection from anybody that sues them. Now, remember, a divorce is a lawsuit. So if your child is married and you're worried about a potential ex-spouse taking control over your assets, there are provisions that we can put in place that can protect against that. So that may seem like it's a little different when I say personal assets aren't protected by a revocable living trust, but then I say they are. You see, what you have to understand is who are we talking about as far as those assets getting that protection? Some circumstances it's provided for, others it's not. You see, that's how this can be so confusing, and it's why you need to continue watching this channel to get the information that you need. If you haven't had a chance to do so yet, be sure to like and subscribe to this YouTube channel so you'll be notified when we come out with new videos of information that you need to know about. Now, speaking of the creditor protection clause, that just kind of underscores the importance of the language that we put into the trust agreement. You see, protection of assets means a lot of different things, and it means different things to different people. Protection of assets may mean for you setting up your estate plan, I want to protect my assets from my children. I want to protect my assets from my grandchildren. I want to make sure that they don't just splurge on all sorts of extravagant expenses and blow all the money that you worked so hard to accumulate and pass on to them. Well, we have different clauses, and that's where the language is very, very important as far as how you put this thing together. One of the things that I always like to do, in addition to the creditor protection clause, I like to have a spendthrift provision. So if your trustee is concerned that one of the beneficiaries is demonstrating irresponsible behavior, whether that be financially irresponsible behavior where they're just blowing money, or just behavior that's causing you to be concerned that they're going to blow through this money for other reasons, well, the trustee can say, well, you know what, we're not going to distribute this. And they have that discretion pursuant to this spendthrift provision. Another thing, I know we hate to talk about things like this or have to think about them, but we also have a substance abuse provision. What if, God forbid, something happens that, You have a beneficiary that struggles with drugs or alcohol. Nowadays that's something that we see all too often, and it's something you have to protect against. The thing is, we hope for the best, but we plan for the worst. And that's something that we always do with any sort of estate plan. That's why the language that's contained in your trust agreement is so important. Now, people will ask me all the time, they say, hey, does it matter who sets up your trust? Sometimes people think a trust is a trust is a trust. Well, the trust is only as good as the trust agreement. I've seen trust agreements, anywhere from $50 at an office supply store to I've seen trust agreements that have cost in excess of $50,000. Well, you think, wow, $50,000, who would be stupid enough to pay $50,000 for a trust agreement? Well, in that particular instance, that particular trust agreement saved that estate over $5 million. Well, who would be stupid enough to spend $50,000? Somebody wants to save $5 million. May we all be that stupid. You look at this, the reality is language matters. What's written in the trust agreement is vitally important. Sure, you can go to LegalZoom or Legal Shield or one of these groups online to get your setup, but do they know you? Do they understand your circumstances? Do they understand the complexity involved in an overall estate plan that ties in LLCs, that ties in rental properties, that ties in business interests, that understands succession planning, that understands the need for all of this very customized language? Well, my guess is that's not going to happen. That's why you get the discount. Well, when it comes to your estate plan, you're not looking for a discount. You're looking for somebody that can help you protect yourself, protect your assets, and protect your family. Well, that's exactly what we do, and we share with you how to go about doing this. I put together a mini course that I call Enlightened Estate Planning. And what I want to tell you about that course, first and foremost, is that I'm going to give that to you free of charge. That's my gift to you for watching this video and for sticking around to the end. All you have to do to take advantage of this absolutely free is to click the link below and enter your information to access this incredible strategy-filled course. It's something that will transform your overall estate and give you the tools you need to take action on protecting yourself and taking care of your family. Once again, it's a free course, Enlightened Estate Planning, and it will enlighten you on estate planning. Take advantage of it now. I'm JJ Childers. Thanks for watching.